Depression that accompanies grief isn't just sadness. It is a shadowy behemoth that crawls into every crevice of my existence, suffocating anything remotely vibrant or alive within me. It's like waking up every day to find my soul in a room that's been emptied overnight, gutted by a thief who left behind nothing but echoes of grief and everything that used to be. The creativity and the motivation I once clung to are nowhere to be found, as though they've been evicted by grief and replaced with a relentless gray fog. Even simple tasks, ones that used to flow naturally, feel like scaling a mountain made of quicksand. And every step forward feels like a betrayal to my body that just wants to sink into the numbness and stay there. When I try to sit and create, whether it's writing, crafting, or even planning something simple as dinner, I find myself staring into a void. My mind is a blank canvas, not because it's clean or ready to be filled, but because grief has stolen all of the colors and the brushes. Ideas that once danced freely in my head are now chained down, weighted by exhaustion, fear, and hopelessness. It's as though my muse has been locked behind the same door as my joy, and no matter how many times I try to force it open, it stays sealed. Motivation doesn't just disappear, it gets buried under the rubble of grief, untouchable and unobtainable in the same way that my sun is. The things I once loved to do, the things that made me feel alive, now mock me with their irrelevance. And what's the point of creating, of dreaming, and striving when the person who brought meaning to it all isn't there anymore? And then there are the fires. The California wildfires aren't just on the news for me. They are an embodiment of my worst fears made tangible. They creep closer as unstoppable and consuming as the grief inside me, and the distance doesn't soothe me the way it might for others. It's 15 miles away, they tell me, as if it's meant to comfort me. But 15 miles may as well be 15 feet when you are already half dead. I have already stood in the wreckage of the unthinkable and felt the earth collapse beneath my feet. And I have learned how easily the threads that hold life together can snap. And those fires, they don't feel far-fetched, and they don't feel far away. They feel like a predator circling and waiting for its chance to take whatever I have left. People have been calling me crazy or irrational when I have voiced these fears, but they have not walked this path. And they don't know what it feels like to lose the most precious part of your existence and then be forced to live every day with the weight of that loss crushing your chest. Losing a child changes the way you see the world. It alters your reality in such a profound way that every danger, every what if becomes more real, more tangible because you have learned that the worst case scenario isn't just a maybe, it is your life. When I think about my daughter and the wildfires, it's not an overreaction, it's my reality. I don't have the privilege of being reassured by statistics or probabilities because I know firsthand that those don't matter. I have heard the line, "It won't happen to you," over and over again, and then it did. So when the fires rage and the winds shift, my mind spirals into vivid, unbearable images of losing her too. I can see it so clearly, her room reduced to ashes, her laughter extinguished like embers of a dying fire. And then comes the guilt, because I know that this fear, this clinging, suffocating fear, could rob us both of the freedom and the joy that we deserve. But how do I let it go when I know what it feels like to lose everything when everyone says that's not possible? Depression, grief, fear, they all conspire to pull me under, to keep me paralyzed in a world that feels unsafe and unkind. And I keep going because I have for Zuma, for Jaden, and for the memory of Kingston, for the faint hope that one day I might find a sliver of light in this darkness. But even on the best days, it's a fight. It's a fight to breathe, to function, to believe that the fire inside me can survive the fires around me. Depression, fear, and the ever-present specter of grief have paralyzed me in ways that I didn't know were possible. This isn't just a mental block, it's physical, as though my body has been wrapped in chains forged from despair. The fear of those unpredictable wildfires reaching us, that fear that I can't control, has gripped me so tightly that I couldn't make it to day 2 of a job that I fought tooth and nail to get just to land. The flames outside might be miles away, but the ones inside of me roar so loudly, consuming any shred of logic or rationality, I can barely breathe. That morning, it was as if my brain had been hijacked by an invisible intruder who whispered every worst-case scenario directly into my ear. I could see it so vividly. The fire leaping over the hills, devouring streets, and swallowing everything in its path like some sort of vengeful beast intent on proving my fears. I tried to talk myself down, to remind myself of the distance, but logic doesn't win against grief. Logic doesn't stand a chance when your body remembers what it's like to lose someone you love. The fires weren't just 15 miles away. They were under my skin, in my chest, crackling and suffocating me until I felt like I was the one burning. I sat there staring at the clock, willing myself to move, to take the first steps towards showing up for this job that had already felt like scaling Everest just to land. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave. The thought of stepping out of my front door felt like dangling off the edge of a cliff with nothing but a frayed rope to hold me. My limbs felt like they were made of lead, my lungs filled with invisible smoke, and every cell in my body screamed that it was not safe. It was like being trapped inside of a car that stalled on the train tracks, hearing the distant rumble of the oncoming train, knowing you should move, but you have found yourself completely frozen instead. Just couldn't go. By the time the sun had climbed higher in the sky, my heart was racing so fast that I thought that it might stop altogether. And my hands shook as I clutched the phone, wondering if I should call an ambulance, because surely no one's heart beat this hard without consequence. My skin felt wrong, too tight, like I was wearing somebody else's body. Every breath I took felt shallow and desperate, like I was trying to drink air through a coffee stirrer. Instead of calling 911, I stayed rooted in the spot, staring at the screen, thinking about how it would feel to explain myself to paramedics. How do you tell someone that you're not having a heart attack, you're having a grief attack? That the flames you're panicking over aren't just outside of your door, but in your chest, where they've been smoldering since the day you lost your son? That what they're looking at isn't a medical emergency, but a mother fighting a war against invisible enemies, depression, fear, and the memories of what it's like to have everything you love reduced to ashes. Eventually, the day slipped by, and with it went the chance to show up for that job. It's just another thing that grief got to steal from me, another reminder of how paralyzed I've become. But more than that, it's a testament to the terrifying grip that fear and depression can have when your life has already been broken once. These fires in California might be miles away. The fires in my mind are right here, raging, consuming, and threatening to take me under. When you've already stood in the ashes of your world, every ember feels like it could be the one that takes you down for good. Every day since Kingston died, Zuma has been fighting her own invisible battle, and I didn't fully understand it at first. These meltdowns every morning, her desperate pleas not to go to school. At the time, I thought it was just her grief finding another outlet, a reaction to the immense change we'd been thrust into. The other day, when I was supposed to be at that job, I finally understood exactly how she feels. I was there, standing in those same shoes, and I couldn't do it either. I just couldn't. The weight of it all crushed me, and I realized that what I've been asking of her, what I've expected her to push through, is something even I can't manage. I had to quit. There was no way that I could keep going. In that moment, I knew I owed her an apology. This morning, when she couldn't get out of bed, her eyes welling with tears because she whispered to me about yet another nightmare, it hit me all over again. She said Kingston was in her dream, so vivid and so real, but when she woke up, she couldn't hug him or take him with her. She looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, her heartbreak pouring out like waves crashing against the shore, and I knew I couldn't force her to push through it again. I couldn't tell her just to get up, go to school, just function in a world that doesn't feel right anymore. This Saturday marks 6 months. 6 months since Kingston left this world, since he took his last breath in my arms and left a hole so vast and unfillable it feels like the air is thinner around me. 6 months since the unimaginable became a reality, and all of those phrases people use to comfort you, it's not likely, you're overthinking, or that won't happen, were shattered by the undeniable truth. It did happen. It's not a possibility anymore. It's our reality, unchangeable and brutal. And it's a reality that Zuma and I face every single day together, trying to navigate a world that feels foreign and cruel without him. And she is just a child, yet she carries the weight of grief that even I as an adult struggle to bear. When I look at her, I see her courage. Just getting through the day takes a strength that most people will never have to summon. But I also see her pain, her exhaustion, and the quiet battles with the nightmares and the empty spaces that Kingston used to fill. And when I think about how I've tried to push her to get back to normal, I feel the deepest guilt. Because the truth is, there is no normal anymore. Not for me, not for her. And maybe, just maybe, I've been asking her to carry more than she can because I've been afraid to admit that I can't carry it either. So today, instead of pushing, I held her. I let her cry and I told her it was okay to feel every single thing she's feeling. I told her that I understand now in a way that I didn't before, and that she doesn't have to face this alone. That we're in this together, Zuma and me trying to face together a life that seems impossible to rebuild. 6 months is no time at all when you've lost someone like Kingston. 6 months is a blink, a breath, a cruel joke when the absence stretches so far into forever that you can't see the end. And no one who hasn't been here on this brutal, lonely road can fully grasp how hard it is to keep going, to keep showing up when the world feels like it's forgotten the one person that you will never forget. I owe her more than just an apology. I owe her the understanding that grief doesn't follow schedules or timelines, that sometimes It takes everything just to make it through the day. And even then, it might not be enough. And that's okay. Grief isn't a journey that ends with clarity or closure, and anyone who's walked this path knows that. So here's the reality. There is no hope in this. There is no it gets better waiting on the other side. There is just this raw, endless ache that takes everything from you and leaves you with nothing but questions and shattered pieces you don't know how to hold. 6 months, it's not a moment, it's a relentless grind of days where the weight of Kingston's absence presses down on me, on Zuma, on everything. It's a constant thrum of panic that wakes me up in the night, the sound of my own heartbeat feeling like an alarm. It's sitting in the dark listening to her cry because she can't hug her brother, and knowing that I can't fix it, that I can't fix any of it. And no amount of it's going to be okay will ever erase that truth. And for 6 months, I've been trying to survive in a world where the worst thing that could ever happen has already happened to us. Every single day, the fear of losing again, losing her, sits right there beside me, a shadow I cannot shake. The world calls it irrational, but to me, it's the only rational thing left. When you've already stood in the ashes of your life, what's stopping the flames from coming back? Nothing. Nothing at all. So when someone tells me you gotta push through, you gotta be strong, you gotta find normal again, I just wanna scream. I wanna ask them what they know about surviving the impossible. Because for me, pushing through it isn't strength, it's pretending to not be drowning when every part of you is clawing just to breathe. And normal died the day that Kingston did. It burned right along with everything else I thought was certain. The truth is, I don't have the answer, a solution, or a way to wrap this up neatly. All I have is this pain, raw, relentless, and unforgiving pain. I want you to get it. I want you to hear it. I wish you could feel it just for 1 minute, because the reality of grief doesn't end, it doesn't heal, it just is. And if you've ever had to live in that space, consider yourself lucky. Because for me and for Zuma, this is it. This is our life now. A place where pain will be constant, fear is survival, and the rest of the world looks at us like we're broken for not being able to move on. But how do you move on when the fire never stops burning? You learn to live in the ashes, and you try not to choke.